I have finished, finally, it took me forever because this thing is fucking huge. European Travel for the Monsterous Gentlewoman by Theodora Goss. So, this is a sequel to The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. Wait, oh my god, how do I describe this series? So it's basically a big crossover between a bunch of, like, Victorian horror gothic science fiction and mystery. And the kind of idea that connects them all is that a bunch of people like Victor Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll belong to this thing called the Alchemical Society, or the Société des Alchimistes, because it's actually, the title is French, but whatever, but not important. And they all participated in, like, scientific research, but a lot of these specific men were doing research into trying to create a person who would be immortal, or who would, like, be the next step of evolution or whatever. And a bunch of these, in the first book, a bunch of these young women who are their daughters or their creations end up meeting each other and forming this group. And in the first book, they, like, find out, they solve the mystery behind Jack the Ripper. They spend a lot of time with Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, which is, like, why I read it. And just, like, a bunch of stuff happens. And I am not familiar with a lot of the source material for some of these characters. Like, I've never read The Island of Dr. Moreau. I haven't actually read Dracula, which was not relevant to book one, but it is a lot relevant to this book. But of course I know what happens in Dracula. I have read all the Sherlock Holmes mysteries because I am obsessed with them, and I did read Frankenstein, so I don't know, I'm, like, in the middle. But anyway, this book. So this is the sequel. It's set, like, 3 months after the first one, and they get a letter from the former governess of Mary Jekyll, who is, like, sort of the main character, and saying that they need... Sorry, let's try again. She's asking them to come to go to Vienna and to rescue Lucinda Van Helsing. Because she's like, Van Helsing has been experimenting on his daughter. So first of all, I have not read Dracula, as I said, but I feel like the last thing Van Helsing would do would be, like, want to make vampires, because he fights vampires, right? But whatever. These are, you know, obviously not the same source material. Maybe it's a different Van Helsing. I don't know, who cares? That's not the point. The point is that I quite enjoyed this. I did think, you know, it was maybe a bit too long. There were some sections that could have been shortened, like there's this whole part where they're trying to travel to Budapest from Vienna, and they're taking a coach, but, like, none of them actually know how to get there, so it takes them some time to realize that they've been going the wrong way, and then they're like, oh no, I guess we've been kidnapped. But personally, I don't think I needed to know where they stayed every night on this journey, because it was, like, it took them, like, 4 days. Like, it doesn't matter, guys. We can skip this. But a lot of the book probably wouldn't be skippable, so I don't know, I feel like it would still be pretty long, and that's okay. Just, you know, maybe, like, a little bit shorter. But, yeah, I really did enjoy it. It's a really interesting idea for a series. Oh, I loved that Irene Adler plays a part in this book. When they're in Vienna, they meet up with her. Well, she's called Irene Norton, obviously, because she got married. But, and this is set some time after that. Like, I don't think the book ever makes it clear what year it's supposed to be, but very tail end of the 19th century, I guess. Just based on, like, the fact that Sherlock Holmes is involved. But, I thought, okay, I will give this book some credit. They don't do the thing where Irene Adler and Sherlock Holmes are in love. Like, I thought they were gonna, because Watson was like, oh, she was the love of his life. But then later, I guess Mary or somebody mentions this to Irene, who's like, no. She's like, no. We would not have been good for each other. No, no. And I was like, wow, thank you. So, that's cool. Because, like, every adaptation I have ever seen, or, like, read, or whatever, interprets Irene Adler that way, and it's like, I don't want that. It's not, I mean, it's not like it's always bad. Sometimes it's fun, but it just gets tiring after a while, because you're like, that is not what happened in the original story. Okay, anyway, calm down. Yeah, so this was fun. There was lots of vampires, which was probably my favorite part of it. Carmilla, who was a vampire from another book I've never read, was there, and Count Dracula was there a bunch, and he was pretty great. And, like, yeah, it was fun. They went on the Orient Express, and they went to Vienna, and they went to Budapest, and they had, like, an interesting time. What am I talking about? And, I feel like you could go through this and be introduced to quite a lot of desserts and pastries from these places as well. Like, you could write a little list of them. Oh, also Sigmund Freud is in like 2 chapters of this, so that's insane. Lots of fun, and it just kind of takes you all over and follows all the different characters, and there's some fun action sequences of fighting vampires, you know. And yeah, so I did really end up enjoying it. I kind of had trouble remembering some of the stuff that happened in the first book, but I got past that. It was okay. And there's a 3rd book. So it's like part of the reason I actually decided to finally read this is because the 3rd book just came out, and the main premise from that I've heard is that Sherlock Holmes has gone missing. And yeah, that's the case, because at the very end of this book they find out, okay, Holmes has been missing for several weeks actually, but they were kind of hoping he'd just show up again. But they're like busy in Central Europe, so like they can't do anything about that. But now Watson has also gone missing, and this young woman who works for them and has some sort of mesmer power has also been kidnapped. And so it's like, oh no, we've got to get back to London, and we've got to deal with this. So we're gonna find out. And also, like, this is a total spoiler, I know, because I'm telling you how this ended. But, like, the kind of preview for the next book, the lead-in, is also that, like, we see that Alice, the girl, has been kidnapped by Professor Moriarty. And I'm like, oh my god, yes. Let's do it. So, I'm really excited about that. And hopefully we'll read the 3rd book, like, sooner than I read the 2nd book, because it took me, like, a year and a half to get to this. So, like, let's do it faster next time. Yeah, and on that note, I also really like the cover of this. The first book had a similar cover, and that's like what drew my eye to it, which is why I picked it up in the first place at the library. So shout out to whoever designed this, because you made me read the first book. Thanks. Bye. Hello. The Witch Elm by Tana French. This is a big boy. 18 discs. Alright, so this is a mystery about, well, I guess essentially it's about a family that finds a skeleton in the witch elm in the backyard of, like, the familial house. But it's only partially about that. Also, it takes like a 1/3 of the book before they even find the skull. I was like, I'm waiting, because it says on the back that they find a skull in the tree. And I was like, so the main character is, like, telling the story. I mean, obviously, I guess. Yeah, he's telling the story from, like, in the future. He's telling us the story, and, like, he starts it, or this whole thing happened to him where some burglars, like, were burglarizing his apartment, and he woke up and tried to stop them, but they just beat the shit out of him. He almost died. He got brain damage. And, like, after that, his whole life takes this completely different trajectory, but that's, like, where it starts. But, and then it gets into this whole thing because they find the skeleton. So, like, his uncle lives in this house, which used to belong to their grandparents, which used to belong to their great-grandparents, like, the whole thing. And one day the whole family is over, and one of the little kids finds a skull in the tree. And it all spirals from there. But, like, there's a full 1/3 of this book And they're pretty lengthy thirds before you get to that point. So, I did think it was a good book, but it was very slow, and it was very focused on, like, the character's internal journey, I guess, because it was interesting because it ends up being a lot of stuff about privilege without ever actually using the word, which is interesting. But basically, where Toby has been lucky all his life, and this is the first time anything random and terrible has happened to him, but it's, I don't know. I could go into a lot of detail, but I don't really want to. You do, of course, eventually find out who done the killing. And it's interesting. There weren't that many options. I mean, you know, when you reach a certain point in a mystery book and you're like, okay, unless this is a piece of shit book that's going to tell me a random person we've never met did the killing, it's going to be one of the main characters. So, like, you're always kind of able to think up some reasons and kind of guess. So, yeah, and I think that's fun, but, you know, there weren't a huge number of suspects, really, in this book. There were, like, 4. And part of the thing is that Toby, I guess this isn't too much of a spoiler, but Toby at one point thinks that maybe he killed this guy, because he can't remember, and because his memory is shitty because of this brain trauma, and he's worried that he's forgotten something, like, extremely important. And there's a lot of stuff about, like, ableism in this, and about, like, death. Ableism without ever using the word ableism. I mean, I'm not saying she should have. I just think it's interesting how she's able of, like, writing a story about something without, like, using all these obnoxious sociology terms. Anyway, yeah, I did think it was good, but, like, I didn't, I guess, ultimately find it that satisfying. Maybe because it was so slow. Like, not a lot really happens in it, because that's not really what it's about. But yeah, so it wasn't scary, it wasn't creepy, and I was hoping it would be creepier, but there was a lot of interesting just kind of stuff about the main character's, like, reaction to this attack, and, like, that I enjoyed all of that, I guess. But yeah, it's mostly about him and his uncle, who, by the way, has, like, brain cancer, and his girlfriend and his cousins, who both are really annoying, but, like, you're right about all of this, but oh my god, you're so annoying. But part of that, I think, is just listening to an audiobook makes characters really annoying sometimes, because the reader will just give them an annoying voice. Anyway, all that is also, like, what is the choice of the cover here? Because, like, that doesn't look like a witch elm, right? Like, a witch elm, an elm tree has a thick trunk. It has to, because, like, a dead body was literally stuffed in there. So, don't know what's going on with these, like, willowy little, like, aspens. Anyway, that's not important. What is important is that I read this, but now I'm done with it because it took forever. I don't know if I'm going to read anything else by Tana French, because I know most of her, I think all of her other books follow detectives. This is, like, the one that doesn't, so, like, maybe if I'm desperate, but I don't know. Well, because I was thinking about it, and I was like, I'm not really sure that I will. Whereas, on the other hand, I definitely want to read more things by Gillian Flynn, so that's the difference, I guess. Okay, you know what, enough. Wrap up. I would say it was a good book, but, you know, it wasn't, like, amazing. I wasn't blown away by it. Hello. New camera. I got it for my birthday. So, we're trying this out. To talk about Golden State by Ben Winters. I liked this quite a lot. I was kind of kind of close to the end when I realized it's essentially Fahrenheit 451. Which, if you've read that, will tell you something about the main character's, like, trajectory of plot in this book. But, okay, so what it's about, basically, is this guy is a sort of law enforcement officer that the Golden State, which is a country in some nebulous future, which is basically California, but they don't call it California, they call it the Golden State, and it has, like, a different government, and has sort of erased its history. Yeah, so he's a law enforcement officer called a speculator, and they're not like regular police officers. What they do is they can sense if somebody is lying, and lying is illegal. And it's pretty weird. But I liked it. He starts off thinking it's just going to be another day. He is supposed to go and look at a crime scene where a man has fallen off of a roof to his death, and he is supposed to look for some sort of anomaly. I was interrupted and I don't know where I was. Explaining the plot. Yes, okay. So Laszlo Ratasik is a speculator, and he is sent to a crime scene where a man has died to see if there's any, like, book is falling off my lap. See if there's any, like, anomalous things, and there aren't, but over the course of the book, kind of, he starts investigating this, mainly because of this young woman who's assigned to work for him, or to work with him. She's, like, just joined the bureau, or whatever they call it, and she's, like, young, but she's super good at sensing these anomalies. And they never really go into, like, why some people are good at sensing lies. It's weird, because otherwise it's basically just set in a surveillance state that doesn't even have super high technology in comparison to our own. Like, I think most of the stuff that they do in this book is totally achievable with modern day technology, which is probably part of what makes it kind of work, I think, as a dystopia. But yeah, so it's a murder mystery, but it also turns into this conspiracy, and it lost me a little bit because I'm still not entirely sure what he was right about. And then the ending is, like, kind of wild. But again, if you've read Fahrenheit 451, there's a trajectory the main character in that book takes, and Laszlo kind of takes the same trajectory in this book. But, like, I did like it. I liked it. It was engaging, and also, I really like the cover. Like, I assume this is some sort of, like, horrific interstate that exists somewhere in LA, probably. You probably can't see them, but there are palm trees in this picture as well. And I like the kind of oversaturated pink color happening. I don't know. It's cool. Whatever. And I enjoyed it. Today I finished listening to One Corpse Too Many by Ellis Peters, which is the second book in the Brother Cadfael Chronicles. I read/listened to the first book in, like, February, I think it was. And I thought, what the hell, it's not like I need to wait any longer. Let's listen to another one. I liked it. I feel like I say that every single time I'm like, look, I read a new book. I liked it. Whatever. It was fine. Like, I kind of wish it had spent more time focusing on the murder mystery
than it did. It was mostly about some other stuff. But it was also interesting because, like, it's set during some English Civil War I've never heard of. What's up? I'm dumb. Or not British. And, apparently at some point there was a king who died, and he said, my daughter will be my heir, and everybody had a problem with that because they're sexist. And some cousin of hers decided, like, no, I should be king. So that's King Stephen versus Empress Maud. King Stephen is in this a bunch, and basically him and his camp have kind of showed up at Shrewsbury, which is the English town really close to the Welsh border, where Brother Cadfael lives at the Benedictine Abbey of St. Peter and St. Paul. I don't know if Shrewsbury is a real place, like, I have no idea. I'm assuming it's not, but what do I know? And while they're there, they take, I guess it's a castle, and they kill all the people who were, like, the soldiers or whatever who were there. But then when Cadfael comes to basically clean all of the bodies up and get them ready for burial, he realizes that one of the bodies belongs to someone who was clearly killed in a slightly different way, someone who was garroted and isn't wearing, like, chainmail or anything. And he's like, this is strange. This person isn't meant to be here. There's one corpse too many. What? So then he tries to figure out, like, who this guy is and how he died. But there's also a lot of focus on other stuff, like basically this the castle had belonged to some lord or other, and one of his main guy's daughter is still in town and hasn't been able to get away, and she's disguised herself as a girl and is hiding at the abbey, and Cadfael figures out that she's a girl, like, instantly, and is helping her. And then there's a treasure that some people are trying to, like, get out of town to get to some supporters of Princess Maud, and it's like a whole thing. So there's a lot more focus on that. Now, the guy who was murdered was one of the people who was trying to move the treasure, so it's not like it's irrelevant, but it was just, like, less of a murder mystery than I kind of hoped it would be. I don't know. I felt like the first book had more focus on the murder mystery, but, like, I don't know. That's just, like, my expectations not being completely fulfilled, so that's not really the best complaint, I guess. Like, not the most relevant complaint, but, I didn't, you know, like, dislike the book or anything. I liked it. It was, you know, it was, like, kind of... No, I liked the book, and it was, you know, just pretty, I guess, average murder mystery type stuff. But I think what keeps my interest is that it's set in, like, in the Middle Ages or whatever. I think. I don't know anything. It's like 11 something, I guess. I don't really know that either. I could look all this up because this Civil War actually happened. I could look up when it happened, and I could look up who won, but I'm not gonna, because, like, it's sort of fun not knowing. Because at one point I went on Goodreads and I looked at, like, the first few books of the Brother Cadfael Chronicles, and just very basic, like, 2-sentence descriptions of what they're about. And this is not the only book that's set during that Civil War. So I kind of don't want to know where it's going, I guess. Because even though it's history, it's an opportunity where I don't know who wins. And it doesn't really matter to me who wins, but it might be interesting to find out along with the characters. I don't know. So I guess I will continue reading the series because I enjoyed it, and, you know, I'll get back to that whenever I feel like it, as usual. Also, the books are really short. Like, I'd say just under 200 pages probably, so it took like a week to listen to because I listen to them when I'm commuting, so I only listen to like one disc a day, but still, it's like a really short period compared to the last one I listened to. It took me like a month because it was such a long book. Anyway. it's just for future reference for myself, I guess. Like if I want a quick read, one of these guys will do it. So I think we're good. On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. So I just finished this last night. This is a very long graphic novel. Graphic novels are not usually my thing, but I thought I'd try this one because I heard it was queer, and it is. It's kind of sci-fi, and basically it's about a girl who gets a job on a, like, space construction crew. For some reason, all of the buildings in this particular universe float in space, and so their job is just to go and kind of, like, fix up some of the old ones or whatever, you know, just assignments that they get from whoever hires them. But, so it's that for a while, interspersed with flashbacks to when she was in, like, high school, and this girl that she dated and who then disappeared. Well, it's not like she mysteriously disappeared, just she went back home. So, and then eventually, finally, the story gets around to having a plot, and it's like she wants some help going to find this girl again and to say goodbye to her properly. So it took like a third of this book before I really cared, and before it started getting into kind of plotness stuff. But then after that it improved, and I like the artwork. It's kind of hard to tell what's happening sometimes because it's very, like, not monochrome, but it'll have like 3 colors max per page. But there's a lot of just big, squiggly, I'm trying to find some of the particularly cool pages that are just like, look, here's a place. I like the ones that are just a whole page of a picture of, say, I don't know, like a sort of a, like, look, this is the silhouette of these people, and then here's the background is this very, and then, like, practically everywhere they go is in space, so, like, there's always just the night sky, or not the night sky, that's not right, just space behind them, like there's no sky, it's not discussed how they're all breathing. I assume there's some sort of technology for that. I liked it pretty well, like by the time it got into actually having some plot and action. I wish there had been more of that earlier. But, I thought the love story kind of thing was sweet. I'm just gonna, like, complain about everything. But I did like it. Yeah, like, Mia and Grace were sweet together, and I really did like kind of why Mia wanted to find Grace again, and their scenes together when they're older. The characters were all fine. I wasn't, like, super invested in any of it, but I did like it. I don't know. Graphic novels are just not my thing. Also, this one has this kind of weird, so I've heard all people describe it basically as, it's for whatever reason in this particular universe there just aren't any men, and that seems to be true. And, like, at first at the beginning I thought maybe it's just a coincidence because she went to a girls' school and then, you know, it's the crew of this ship. But as the thing went on, it's just like there don't seem to be any men in this universe. Rather than just, oh, there's only a handful of characters and they all happen to not be men. I don't know how to explain why this bothers me, because it's stupid that it bothers me. And it's not like I'm like, oh no, there need to be men in everything. But I guess just, like, everybody in this is a woman except for the one non-binary character. I think really what would have helped is if there were more non-binary characters. Because then at least it would feel a little bit, like, more inclusive, I guess. I don't even know. It's just, Not even a thing I should complain about, but it was getting my back up. And I think, honestly, I probably, like, wouldn't even have cared as much if that's not how it had been described to me from the beginning. Like, when I heard about people talking people talking about it. Because, like, that's not even really relevant to the story at all. It doesn't matter. But, I don't know. I guess it's because there's just always this part of me that immediately, as soon as something is kind of different, I just kind of go, well, what about these people and these people? So naturally, it's something like this. I'm like, what about, I don't know, trans men, for example? What about, like, non-binary people who are largely masculine? What about people who are into men and like them? Who are they supposed to date? Does everybody just date women? Because it's not interesting. But okay, I'm just being whiny for no reason. Like, honestly, it was fine. And I did like that it was just so casually, like, queer. And the art's pretty nice. I did have some trouble telling the characters apart later in the story, actually. There's this whole part where they're kind of underground in the dark, and at that point I was just like, I can't tell who anyone is, because the art style's not super distinctive on the characters. It's largely like the coloring. So I can tell them apart, like, okay, these two characters have basically the same hair, but I can tell them apart because it's different colored. But then they're underground, so I can't, because everything's kind of like kind of gray and black. So that was annoying. But that was only honestly for like one scene. And it has a sweet ending, and you know, it's overall it's nice. So I liked it. I'd say give it a read.